No matter what type of story we read, horror stories always take the top position. When reading this, we get a rush of excitement and fear. But what if the stories you're reading are true incidents? How would you react to that? To know that these aren't simply stories, but have actually happened to people like us. Feel that hair sticking up in your hands? So we're here today to share two of the most popular true horror stories. Grab your blankets and turn off the lights, because we're about to go on a roller coaster. Number 1. The Enfield Poltergeist. The story of the paranormal events that occurred at an ordinary council house in Enfield, North London, is known as the Enfield Poltergeist, and it is one of Britain's most popular and well-known ghost stories. It's also been served as the backdrop for a big Hollywood feature picture, The Conjuring 2, as well as the Sky TV series The Enfield Haunting, both with star-studded casts. Many people are divided about the story of the Enfield Poltergeist house, with some respected members of paranormal societies thinking the Hodgson family's account is totally accurate. However, many critics believe that several aspects of the story point to it being a fabrication. Although we may never know what happened, the Enfield Poltergeist remains the most intriguing ghost story of modern British history. The Enfield Poltergeist story originated in 1977 and focused on the Hodgson family, particularly on Janet, the youngest daughter. Mother Peggy, daughters Margaret 13 and Janet 11, and sons Johnny 10 and Billy 7 lived in Enfield in a typical semi-detached council house. Peggy Hodgson, a 47-year-old divorced mother of 4, told her children to stop arguing and go to sleep on Tuesday, August 30th, 1977. She went to bed, ignoring their complaints about the bed shaking. The next night, she heard a shuffling sound like slippers on linoleum and 4 loud knocks. A dresser slid. It slid forward again after Peggy pushed it. She couldn't push it back. Vic Nottingham, a roofer, and his son Gary investigated the Hodgson's property and heard banging from everywhere. The police arrived at about 1 a.m. The cops found nothing to explain the tapping in the walls, attic, and pipes. Vic returned home the next night and was attacked by flying Lego. For 3 days, council members and clergy helped with marbles and Lego. Mrs. Nottingham called the Daily Mirror for guidance, unsure of what to do. Douglas Benz and Graham Morris reported for the Mirror. David Thorpe and Mirror senior reporter George Fellows visited the residence. Fellows advised contacting SPR. He met society newcomer Maurice Groves. After hearing a loud crash, Groves and the reporters ran inside the children's bedroom to observe any events. A chair flipped over and moved a meter across the room while Janet and Margaret were sleeping. This convinced Maurice to stay and investigate. Groves requested assistance from the SPR in examining the poltergeist. Guy Playfair arrived at the house on September 12th after accepting the request. They fled to Peggy's brother's place. A Lego brick appeared in front of Sylvia while she made tea. The family then realized the entity could follow them outside. Make sure to hit the like button if you are enjoying the video so far. Janet was the center of poltergeist activity, which mainly affects girls and young women. The poltergeist affected Janet's mother, who got headaches before occurrences, and Margaret, who had the same dreams. 2 days later, more SPR members joined. After some whistles and barking, Joe Watson, a gruff voice, spoke. The spirit banged in response to questioning, but a man's voice came from behind Janet's neck. The voice was 72-year-old Bill Wilkins. He replied, "I went blind. I hemorrhaged. I died in a chair below." Terry, Bill's son, verified his father's death. Groves taped her mouth to rule out Janet fabricating the voice, but it continued. He then requested Janet to hold water in her mouth, which she did, and the voice continued. Groves used a contact microphone to capture Janet's voice for hours. The family moved Janet to the South London Maudsley Psychiatric Hospital on July 25th, and the incident stopped, though the family still experienced apparitions. Dr. Peter Fenwick from the Institute of Neuropsychiatry discovered no brain injury or epilepsy in Janet after a thorough medical and psychological evaluation. Thus, the story ended suddenly over there, but it keeps sparking the interest and provoked the questions of people all over the world to this day. Number 2. The Donner Party. If things had gone differently, the Donner Party of pioneers would have made it over the Sierra Nevada and into obscurity in California. Unfortunately, 60 of the original pioneers perished in the mountains that winter of 1846 due to a lack of preparation, a string of unfortunate judgments, and early snowstorms. When supplies of both warmth and food ran short, many people resorted to cannibalism, the greatest of all human taboos. In late July 1846, the wagon caravan reached the Little Sandy, a Wyoming Green River tributary. Oregon Trail curves northwest. The parting of the ways occurred when the Donna Reed group followed the Lansford Hastings cutoff to cut 2 to 3 weeks off to route to California. August 3, 1946, the Donna Reed party crossed the Weber River in Hannaford, Utah. Hastings rode in a tree cleft. He advised them to wait for him and avoid Weber Canyon, which was practically impassable. Reed and 2 co-workers sought Hastings. Hastings delayed the party a week. Despite giving directions, he left. The party built East Canyon and Reservoir. These issues began here. After 3 weeks of hard, depressing effort cutting through barriers, they reached the summit by coupling 4, 6, or 8 oxen to each heavy wagon. This summit is Big Mountain or Donna Reed Pass. These pioneers were alone. None visited the country. They pick a mountain, pass, or canyon daily. It was exhausting. They made a huge error by assuming they should descend Parley's Canyon. Because the canyon was unreachable, they returned to Big Mountain after several days. Immigration Canyon descended. Brigham Young and his Mormon pioneers passed this road a year later. Long-term migration began. The Donna Reed Party's 30-mile canyon trail saved the Mormons the following year. They did it in a week. The Donna Reed Party camped on the Jordan River near the Utah State Fairgrounds on September 2, 1846. The party had 87 members from 6 states and 2 countries, with almost half from Illinois. The Oquirrh Mountains and Black Rock Beach made crossing Salt Lake Valley into Tule Valley easier. The second camping was 20 Wells, a cluster of small sinkhole springs 1 mile northwest of Grantsville. They traveled 15 miles south through Skull Valley to Kanaka Springs after circumnavigating the Stansbury Mountains. Hawaiian Mormons moved to Iosippa in 1889. Hastings instructed the immigrants to store oxen food and water near Kanaka Springs. After resting and stockpiling water, they traveled Skull Valley and stopped at Reedon Springs on the east slope of the Saturn Mountain Range. They ascended Hastings Pass. The pass overlooked Pilot Peak. The stop for water was next. They estimated 35 to 45 miles in 2 days, nearly 70 miles. This trip was their hardest before the Sierra Mountains. Their animals and humans died by the 3rd day. They reached Mud Flat 20 miles from Pilot Peak Spring. After watering the oxen, the pioneers reattached them to the carts. Thirsty oxen and cattle disappeared. The sticky dirt required wheel scraping every few turns as the group crossed the dirt. Oxen collapsed, leaving carts. The group rested for days at Pilot Springs. Before departing Pilot Mountain, they counted their provisions. Without delays, their food supply was insufficient to reach California. Supplies were only available in Sacramento's Sutter's Fort. September made time precious. One morning, Pilot Mountain's twin peaks were covered in snow, a sorrowful reminder of the season's lateness. It was irrevocable. Moving as rapidly as the tired, worn-out oxen could draw the wagons was best. This group proceeded east down the Humboldt River after visiting the beach. While traveling east up the valley, they saw several helpless river Indians. The Walker Party embarrassed themselves by killing scores, probably hundreds of innocent Indians for fun. Indians hated white men for these killings and savage acts and expected retribution. Finally, the weakened Donna Reed Party allowed the Indians to avenge Walker Party losses. The Donna Reed Party broke into smaller and larger groups due to inefficiencies, jealousies, and ideological differences. Each group chose the best. The parties were often divided. They separated sections and they hardly met. This little group helped the Indians. It gave the Indians a chance and safeguarded them because the tribes were too far away and obsessed with their own lives and deaths to aid each other. The Humboldt Indians retaliated by stealing, damaging, swooping in, killing or fleeing with cattle and slowing process. These actions drove the Donna Reed Party to abandon or cache wagons. Most walked and carried loads. This operation killed no Humboldt Indians. They indirectly inflicted immeasurable suffering and fatalities. The William Eddy family, the last group, lost many animals while making breakfast. Indians stole numerous oxen. The group continued and every day was difficult. Will we make the pass before the winter snows? Everyone pondered. October 20th to 23rd had snowfall. After the first violent storm, the company was too exhausted to herd or tie up the oxen. They lost much of their winter food. After slaughtering their last cattle, they ate cooked hides, twigs, bones, and bark. Some men hunted unsuccessfully. The party struggled to light a fire in a blizzard a few days later. A few others died, and the others resorted to cannibalism to survive. Hence, this is the story of the Donner Party, which was left to be stranded due to improper planning and judgment, leading to cannibalism in order to survive. So there you have it, popular stories of real-life terror that we've read and compiled here for you to enjoy. Out of the two stories, which one have you read before? How did you react when you realized these were not fairy tales? What other real-world paranormal happenings have you come across before? Please do share it with us in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up so we know you enjoyed it. Share and subscribe for more stories, as we have a lot of them up our sleeve.